The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. As this is the right time, I would like to say thank you for all of you watching our webinar today, wherever you are. I would like to say a big thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And also, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is a series of webinars that Sensei provides to the audience. So free webinars that are provided to talk a little bit about the utilization of Project Online, Project Server, and also Microsoft Project. Today, I will be with you talking about understanding baselines and how to manually enter task progress. My name is Raphael Santos, and I am a Microsoft Project MVP, and I work as a principal consultant here at Sensei Project Solutions. So before we get started with our webinar, I would like to introduce a little bit and say a little bit about myself. As I said, my name is Rafael Santos. I'm a principal consultant here at Sensei. So my job is to work with clients and customers in order to help them take their PPM implementation to the next level. So I am part of the delivery team, and the delivery team is the team here at Sensei that works with clients, that engages with clients in order to configure their PPM solution, in order to deploy solutions into their environment, in order to understand their needs and convert their needs in business solutions. So I am one of the only 64 Microsoft Project MVPs around the world. So I have been nominated as a Microsoft Project MVP in the year 2016, and this year I have been renewed, so I am very proud of being an MVP and being a consultant here at Sensei. I have been participating in projects to either adopt and or implement the PPM platform in 3 different continents. So I had previous experiences working in North America. Now I am working in North America with Sensei, but I have been working in different countries here in South America where I live, as well as in Africa. As you can see here, I am based in the city of São Paulo in Brazil. So if you are thinking, or if you ever thought on coming to São Paulo, coming to Brazil, I will let you guys my email address, and you can just ping me and reach me out, and I can show you around in here in the city. So let's talk about a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Sensei Project Solutions, our company and the provider of this webinar. Sensei is basically a Microsoft PPM Gold partner. For the it has the PPM competency, the gold, I would say the gold PPM competency and qualification in project and portfolio management. We have been nominated as the Partner of the Year award in the year 2014, and we have also been finalists in the years 2015 and 2017. So we are a well recognized company, and we have been working with more than 100 ppm deployments over many different clients and countries, and we have trained more than 1000 project managers, team members, as well as project online and project server administrators. So just for you guys to have an understanding and an idea of how Sensei's clients are distributed all over the world, I would say. Uh, Here is a little map in which you can see how how Sensei's clients are distributed. We have staff in 3 different locations. So we have people in the United States and Canada, which is our main base. We have people here at São Paulo in Brazil. This, I would say, not people, but myself. And we have several other people that are distributed over Australia. So we, as I said, we are a very huge company with a strong uh, presence in the PPM world and in the PPM market. So just to finalize here the presentations, Sensei has a collective a collection, I would say. I think the best word would be a collection of services, solutions, trainings, and apps that enhance productivity experiences and that take the ppm implementation to the next level. So if you would like to know more about what we do and about our company, I would encourage you to visit us at senseiprojectsolutions.com. And in there, in our website, you would be able to see all the services, solutions, trainings, and apps that Sensei offers. So moving on here, let's just jump in our webinar and our session today. I would like to talk a little bit about this webinar. So this webinar will be based on the best-selling book that Sensei has, which is called The Proactive PPM with Projects 2016 for Project Online and Project Server. So this is a book that is used by project managers, or is meant to be used by project managers, so that they can use the project desktop in a combination with either Project Online or Project Server to improve and to track their projects. So our webinar today is meant to help you understand the importance of saving a baseline and how we can also track progress in our projects. And it's very relevant that to inform you, or to let you know that our the content for our webinar today can be used with a blank project, a project that is started from a template. If you are only using Project Desktop locally on your machine, or even if you are connected to Project Online or Project Server, the content of this webinar is applicable to any of these situations. So it doesn't really matter if you are just using Project Desktop or if you are connected to Project Online or Project Server. The content of this webinar fits into this and covers all of the scenarios. One thing that I would like to let you know as well is that if you do have questions or comments during the webinar, you feel free to type them in the chat window. And at the end of the presentation, I will be answering all of the questions, comments that you might have. So what's a baseline? So to get started with, what's a baseline when we are talking about baselines in Microsoft Project? So a baseline is basically a process in which we take a snapshot of important values on your project. So when we are planning a project, we have many different activities as project managers. And at the end of the planning phase, when we are ready to go to the execution phase and when we are ready to track our project, it's a perfect place and a perfect moment for us to save a baseline, because it's just going to capture original information about schedule, about work, about cost, and about duration that's involved in the schedule for every task, for every resource, and every assignment in the project. So then, as soon as you do have a baseline saved, you can get started tracking the progress of project and comparing the information that you have in your project against what has been planned in the baseline. So as I said, it's very important, and our recommendation is that you always set or you always save a baseline when in your project before you get to the execution phase, when you begin entering progress. So the best moment would be when you finish the planning phase, then you set a baseline, you basically save the information that you have planned, and then you, as soon as you get started tracking your project, executing your project, you will be able to compare the information. And there is also a warning that I would like to let here, which is that without a baseline, you are not going to be able to analyze any variances when you are executing your project. Just because without a baseline, I do not have any information in which I can use as a reference to track my project and to compare my project against. So one more important information here about the baseline is When we are using Microsoft Project, the software offers by default 11 sets of baselines. So they are named from 0 to 10. So we have baseline 0, and then we go baseline 1, 2, 3 until 10. And each baseline captures the following information. So for task, what is captured from our schedule, from our planning, is the duration, the start, the finish, the work, and the cost. So as soon as you set the baseline, what project is going to do is it's going to basically capture the information that is stored for each one of those items, duration, start, finish, work, and cost, and save it in the baseline that you have determined. It can be baseline 0, baseline 1, 2, 3 until the baseline number 10. For resources, what is recorded or what's captured are the work and cost information. And for assignments, we also the baseline also capture time phased information about work and cost. So it's basically recorded for every task, every resource, and every assignment. So then we can see how the information is moving forward during the time frame of the baseline, or during the time frame of the project. So how can we save a baseline? So I will be doing this in a practical. We are going to do this a hands-on overview, a demo overview. But basically, what you have to do when you are a project manager, you just go to the ribbon in the project area of the ribbon, in the project section of the ribbon, and then under set baseline, there is a button called set baseline. In that button, you can just click set baseline, and then you have another option saying set baseline. So when you set a baseline, you just leave all the default information in there, and as soon as you do have this, you can just set a baseline, and then the information is going to be recorded. So you just leave all the default options, and as soon as you leave all the default options, these options are going to be recorded. So I actually have a project in here that I would like to share with you a little bit. So let me go here to my project professional. And here I do have a project, which is basically a test project or a demo project that we use in our webinars. So here we have to develop user training for an for an ERP system, for an ERP platform, and we do have some tasks in here. So let's say that I am at the end of the planning phase, and then as a project manager, I would like to set my baseline out. I would like to record my information. So what I can do is I can click here in the project section of the ribbon, and then go to the set baseline, and then click on set baseline. As we can see, we do have baselines information from 1 to 10. And one more important information in here is the baseline that project uses for recording the information and also comparing the information, so then we can see the variances, is the baseline that we call baseline 0, right? It doesn't have a number, but we normally call it the baseline number 0. So the baseline number 0 for Microsoft Project is the place in which we are going to store the information, and this is the baseline that Microsoft is going to be using to compare the variances in our project. So for baseline 1 until baseline number 10, so 1, 2, 3 until 10, they are baselines in which we can capture information just to keep historical data. So for example, let's say that I set a baseline today, and then I would like to say, this is my first baseline, my first planning. So what I can do is I can copy the information that comes from baseline number 0 to baseline number 1, for example, and this is going to be my historical data for my first initial planning. But let me set my baseline here, and as soon as I save the baseline, nothing is going to happen really. You are not going to see anything different, but the point is how you can see, or where you can see the baseline that has been saved. So I will go back here to my presentation. Let's move on to the next slide. So as soon as you have defined or you have saved a baseline, what you can do to see the information that has been saved is that you can display the ribbon, the view ribbon in the ribbon, and then you can see any task view such as the Gantt chart, for example, and then you have a table in there that is called baseline. So let me show you how we can see it. So as soon as we are here in our project, I can go to the Gantt chart again, just to make sure that we are in the Gantt chart. And then here in the view section, we do have the tables button. So I will click on tables. And here we can see the most common, the most usual tables that are offered out of the box, or the built-in table that are displayed by default by Microsoft's project. And what I can do is I do not see a baseline information here, but I can go here to more tables. And then in the more tables, I have a table that's called baseline. So as soon as I click on this table that's called baseline, I can click on apply, and then I can see the information that has been stored in the baseline. So I do have my baseline duration, I do have my baseline start, I do have my baseline finish, my baseline work, as well as my baseline cost. I also have another place in which I can see the information, and I would be able to see also if there are variances, if there are differences in between what has been planned and what's being executed. So if I click in the project section of the ribbon and then go to project information, I do have here the statistics button. And in here, I would be able to see the overall information for my project, including the baseline. So I have the start and finish information, and here I have the current and the baseline. I have the duration, the work, and the cost, including the current information as well as the baseline information. So those are two of many options that we do have to see and to be able to understand where is my baseline information stored and where I can access it. So let me go back here to the presentation, and we have seen this. And one more important information that I would like to share is that when we are setting a baseline, it's important for us to know that the baseline only show the baseline information, or the baseline table, is going to be only displaying what has been saved in the baseline number 0. So for information that is stored or saved in baseline 1, 2, 3 until 10, we do not have a default an out of the box table for that. So what we can do is we can basically copy the existing baseline table and then create another one. So then if we are going to create a new table, or if we need to, for example, set a baseline 1 or a baseline 2 for some reason, we can definitely create a custom table for this purpose, and then we can see this information in there. So for the matter of this webinar, for the sake of this presentation, in my view tab, I have created here under the tables section. I will go to more tables, and I have created a baseline 1 table. So there is a table that I created, and it's called baseline 1. Please remember that this is not an out of the box table. So then I created it just for the matter of our presentation. And when I click apply, it's going to be showing the information that is stored in the baseline 1. And as we can see here, we didn't save anything for the baseline 1. So as the information has been saved in the baseline 2, baseline 1 is basically empty. So if we go back here to project and then go to set baseline and then set baseline, let's say that I would like to copy everything from baseline 0 to baseline 1. So then I am recording historical information. I can go here and set an interim plan and then copy from baseline 0 and save it into baseline 1. So then when I do that, I am basically copying what has been saved in baseline 0 to baseline 1. Baseline 0 is going to be the the field or the baseline that I will be using to compare my project and to track my project. And baseline one is going to be storing all the historical information. So as soon as I do that, I can click OK. And then my baseline one table is going to be filled, right? So the fields are going to be filled with the information that has just been set. So let's now move on to our next topic, which is going to be how do you enter task progress? So if you have our book or if you buy our book, you are going to be seeing there that Sensei recommends two methodologies for entering task progress. So we have the first one, which is using the percent complete, or you can be using the actual work. So these manual methods align with the two of the tracking methods available in Project Online and also in Project Server. So if your company is using Project Online or Project Server, and if you do have situations in which you do have to use one of them, those two items, those two options align with what we do have in Project Server as well as in Project Online. Uh, One important thing in here, and I would just like to leave this as a warning, if we do not enter actual progress, then we are not going to be able to analyze variances during the execution stage, right? So we do have to have a combination between the two. We do have to have a baseline, and we do have to have the actuals or the task progress being entered, so then we can track the information in our project. So let's move on. So first of all, we are going to be talking about the utilization of the percent complete methodology. So what I like to do is, and what we as a company recommend you doing is, we can always use the tracking table. So the tracking table is the best table that we can use to determine the progress of the tasks or the progress of our schedule. But what we do is we basically do some changes in the tracking table and we reorder the columns. But what you can do is you can, as soon as you are tracking the percent complete methodology, you can also create your own custom table, right? So what I am going to do here is I am going to go back here and make sure that I am in the Gantt chart view, and then as soon as I am in the Gantt chart view, I will click here in the view and then tables. I could be using the tracking table, which is meant to really track the progress of your tasks. But I will be changing here, and instead of using the tracking table, I will just go to more tables. And then I do have a table here that has been called has been created. So this is not an out of the box table. I created a table for the presentation, and it's called the percent complete tracking method. So when we have the percent complete tracking method, I'm going to apply this. And the only reason I do have this table, this custom table, is because I am going to be just having all the columns that I need in order to track the progress of my task. So for example, if you are a project manager, you are going to basically go and talk to your team members to understand how they are progressing their tasks, how the tasks under their responsibility is progressing. And here, let's say that I have a meeting with Miki Cobb, and I ask her how is her task progressing. So let's say that she says that my task has started yesterday, September the 11th, and I have completed 50% of it. So this is what she tells me. So what I can do is I always like to use the actual start date. So then I will say here that the actual start date for this task is September the 11th. And the reason is, if you are just using the percent complete, the software, Microsoft project, is going to be just putting the information as it was originally planned. But sometimes we do not have this situation. Sometimes the information has been changed. She was not able to start the task as it was originally planned. And the reason I always like to ask when it was the actual start date, so then I can define the actual start date, and then the software can behave as I would expect. And let's say that she said that, I have completed 50% of my task. So her task is 50% completed. And then it says we have an actual duration of 5 days, and there is also a 5 days of remaining duration. So one thing that I like to ask, and one thing that we do recommend as a company for you to ask is, does the remaining duration will be the same? So is this going to be 5 days, or are you going to have to need more time to get this test completed? And if she says yes, I do have some more time, and as a duration tracking method or a duration metric, she says I will still need 7 days. So I am 50% completed, but I will still need 5 days to get this test completed. So I can just go here and say she needs 7 more days in terms of remaining duration, and then my project is going to be calculated as expected. So as soon as she finishes her task, all we can do is ask she when she finished her task, and then we can just go here and do the finished task date, and then this is going to be completed. So this is the utilization, or the best practice for the utilization of the percent complete task, the percent complete methodology in Microsoft Project, right? So then let's go now to the second method that we do recommend you using, which is the actual work methodology. Particularly speaking, I like this method most instead of the percent complete, because I can be more assertive, right? Sometimes you ask your resource, what's the percent complete, what's the percent complete, and this is just a subjective information. So personally speaking, I do like more the actual work methodology. So the actual work methodology will apply the same steps. So I recommend you creating your custom table if you do not like to use the tracking out of the box tracking table. Basically, what we are going to have here indifferently is that the set of columns are going to be different. So instead of having remaining duration, we are going to be in percent complete, we are going to be having actual work and actual finish. So there are some changes in terms of the columns that we are going to be using. And then what I like to do is I like to enter the actual work that has been performed, and I like to ask what's the remaining work instead of asking the percent of completion. So this is going to provide us with some more accurate information. So let me go back here to my project desktop. I will just undo some steps here real quick, and let's get our task back to what it was previously. And I will just be changing here my tables to more tables. And then I have my actual work tracking method table, which is a table that I have customized for this presentation. So I'll be clicking on this table, and I will be clicking apply. And then let's say that I'm going to ask the same questions to Mickey. But here, instead of asking her what's the percent of completion, I will be asking how much work has she performed on this task. So the first question is, where did you start this task? And then let's say that she says, I started this task on September the 11th. So it's going to be the same. But here, instead of, as I said, asking the percent of completion, I will ask how many hours of work have you dedicated for this task? And then she can say something like, I have spent 24 hours, for example. So when I say 24 hours, then my percent of completion here is just going to be calculated based upon what has been done and what's remaining. And I can also ask her, is are 56 hours the amount of work that is needed to complete to get this task completed? And she might say, no, I unfortunately I will need some more hours. So instead of needing 56, I need 72 hours to get this task completed, for example. So then I can update my remaining work here, and then my percent of completion is just going to be changed as well. So this is the best method for tracking when you are using the actual work and remaining work method. And as I said, particularly speaking, this is the method that I like most. Finally, when we are talking about milestones, we are not going to be using percent completion or actual and remaining work. As soon as a milestone is completed in our schedule, all we have to do as project managers is just to be determining that is it a milestone has been completed. So let's say that this milestone is completed, for example. I know that we should be, finishing all the tasks in order for the milestone to be completed, but let's assume that the tasks have been finished. So as soon as I click here on the cursor manual complete, I can just mark the milestone as complete, and then I will have my actual start date, my actual finish date, and my percent complete, all of them done. So this is the way that we recommend you using your project and you tracking the progress on your project. So here, I would like just to go back here to the presentation and let's see if we do have questions. I'll be seeing here. If we do have questions, I will answer them. So let's see. We have a couple of questions here. Let's spend like 2 minutes to answer them. So we have a question from John. So thank you for asking, John. And you said, do you need a table named baseline 1 in order to use the set interim plan to copy from baseline 0 to 1? No, John, you don't need a table to copy information from baseline 0 to baseline 1. The information is going to be stored as soon as you copy from your interim plan from baseline 0 to baseline 1. I only created the baseline 1 because if at any point you would like to see what's the information that has been stored in the baseline 1 fields, there is the place where you go and look for this information. All right. So we have another question here from Matt McDonald. So Matt, thank you for asking. So do the steps you have provided work the same in Microsoft? Yes. Yes, Matt. So the steps that we are talking about here, they are applied for Microsoft Project 27, Microsoft Project 2010, 2013, as well as Microsoft Project 2016. So there are no differences in between the version that you are using. The methods are basically all the same. So we did have another question here from Susan. So Susan, thank you for asking. So you said, I'm confused by the baseline 1 you just set up. Wouldn't you actually do this after you have done work and when you are at a key point, or do you need to do this right after baseline 0? That's a great question, Susan, and that's a question that most people have, a lot of people have actually. So what I do recommend you doing is the following. Let's say that you have finished your planning phase, right? So then you are going to be saving your baseline 0. So the baseline 0 is the one that you are going to be using to compare what has been planned with the execution, right? But I like to save the baseline 1 as well. I like to copy the information that is stored in baseline 0 into baseline 1. And the reason is, as soon as you are moving to the execution phase, you are going to have two baselines. The first one, the 0, is the one that you are going to be using to track your project. And the 1 is this historical information for the first planning, for the first time that you saved a baseline. So then let's say that your project starts and you start tracking your project and collecting task progress and everything, and then you have a change that has been approved, for example. So you have a change in the scope of the project. So what you have to do in there, as soon as you have this change, you have to reflect this change in the baseline. You are going to be updating the baseline 0. So then the baseline 0 is going to be reflecting your current plan and your current approved plan, I would say. And then you save this information in baseline 2. So at this point, you are going to have three baselines. The baseline 0, which is the one that you are going to be using to track and compare your project. The baseline 1, which was the first plan that you have. So this is the historical information for the first plan. And then you have the baseline 2, which reflects or which represents the second plan that you have in your project. So that's the way that I would recommend you doing. All right. And we do have another question here, which is coming from Matt. And he says, what's the best way to handle baselines for new tasks added after baseline has been set? So that's a good question, Matt. This is really up to how your company determines how the changes are going to be added up to your plan. What you can do is when you are setting a baseline match, so let me show you real quick here. So for example, let's say that I do have a new task, right? So if I do have a new task, what I can do is if this new task has been approved and I do have the permission and the authorization to save a baseline with this new task in my project. So it depends on how your company tracks the changes. I would go here to project and then set a baseline. But instead of setting a baseline, because I do have to, I would say, update my baseline for my baseline 0, right? Because this new task has to be represented on the baseline 0. So what I like to do is instead of setting my baseline for the entire project, I cannot do that because if I do that, I will basically overlap what has been saved previously. So I will go here and say, I am going to be setting a baseline, but just for the selected task. And I will be doing a roll up baseline because what I save here has to be rolled up for the summary task. For example, here for the students handouts as well as the project itself. So then this new task is going to be included alone, I would say, in the baseline that has been saved previously. All right. But please keep in mind that this is a circumstance or a situation in which you have to be looking for what your company determines. All right. All right, people. Unfortunately, we will have to finish this. But in case you do have more questions, or in case you have more information that you'd like to discuss, I just would like to let you. I would say to let you free to send me an email, and I will be more than happy to be connecting with you, to be talking with you about any questions that you might have. I am seeing here that in the presentation I didn't have my email, so let me just move it here and let's change this information here. Oops. All right. Oh, this is a right. So my email address, if you'd like to talk to me or send me an email, is Raphael.Santos at senseiprojectsolutions.com. So this is my email address. Please feel free to reach me out if you do have questions, and I will be more than happy to be talking to you, to be clarifying your questions with you. So thanks for watching this session today, and I hope to see you in our next webinar next month. Thank you guys, and have a great day.